Hey, 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 it's Mrs. Klein.
Psst, it's Mrs. Wilburn, and it is time for a podcast. So we are back, second semester.
Second semester, everybody starts with a clean slate. Right on.
Hey, I missed you guys.
I know.
So we're still on lesson 12.
Yes.
Foreign Affairs in the Young Nation. And just to remind you guys of where we left off, where the guiding question, to what extent should the United States have become involved in world affairs in the early 1800s? And remember, when we saw each other last, we ended with causes of the War of 1812. And I just want to review that with you guys.
Sounds good.
3 main causes that we talked about in class were the impressment of U.S. citizens, interferences with American shipping, and what was that other one, Mrs. Klein? It was Native American resistance.
Yes, it was Native American resistance, with the British kind of stirring trouble up.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. All right.
Giving them guns to fight against us.
Yes.
And yes, we remember.
Okay, we definitely remember. Okay, all right. And so those 3 things lead to the declaration of war in 1812. Prior to that, though, you guys, so we're, like we said, we're back with lesson 12, but where we need to get is this podcast is going to cover section 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And so before we get to the declaration of war, we got to figure out, we got James Madison, who's president, and he has a dilemma. He's got to protect sailors and settlers.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
So President James Madison took office in 1809. He tried a new approach to protecting Americans at sea by offering France and Great Britain a deal. If you agree to cease your attacks on American ships, the United States will stop trading with your enemy.
Okay.
Napoleon promptly agreed to Madison's offer. At the same time, Napoleon's navy continued seizing American ships headed for British ports. Madison, who desperately wanted to believe Napoleon's false promise, cut off all trade with Great Britain.
Meanwhile, the British continued seizing ships and impressing American sailors, remember, putting them to work on their boats. Madison saw only one way to force Great Britain to respect American rights. He began to think about abandoning George Washington's policy of isolationism and going to war with Great Britain.
In addition, trouble with the Indians was growing as settlers moved into the Ohio and Mississippi valleys and pushed Indians off their lands. 2 Shawnee Indians, a chief named Tecumseh, and his brother, the Prophet, tried to fight back by uniting Indians along the Mississippi River into one great Indian nation. On November 7th, 1811, a militia force led by Indiana Governor William Henry Harrison fought against Shawnee warriors at Tippecanoe Creek. Although Harrison defeated the Indian forces after the battle, Harrison's men discovered that the Indians were armed with British guns.
Oh, British guns. All right. Americans were outraged. Several young congressmen from the South and West, including Henry Clay of Kentucky and John C. Calhoun of South Carolina, were so eager for war with Great Britain that they were nicknamed war hawks. They argued that to make the northwestern frontier safe for settlers, the United States needed to drive the British out of Canada. Once that was done, Canada could be added to the United States.
Yeah. So what happened? This brings us to the War of 1812. James Madison chose to abandon isolationism. At his request, Congress declared war on Great Britain on June 18th, 1812.
Okay, and there were some battles on the land and also on the sea. War hawks were overjoyed when the War of 1812 began. They thought that conquering Canada was a mere matter of marching. Boy, were they wrong. In 1812, 1813, and again in 1814, U.S. forces crossed into Canada, but each time British forces drove them back, and plans to conquer Canada came to an end.
Yes. Next, the British attacked the port city of Baltimore, Maryland. On September 13th, an American lawyer named Francis Scott Key watched as the British bombarded Fort McHenry, which guarded the city's harbor. The bombardment went on all night. When dawn broke, Francis Scott Key, was thrilled to see the American flag still waved over the fort, proving that the fort had not been captured. He expressed his feelings in a poem that was later put to music as the Star-Spangled Banner.
Okay, all right, you guys. But the most famous battle in the War of 1812 was called the Battle of New Orleans. Okay, New Orleans was defended by General Andrew Jackson and a diverse army of about 7,000 militia that included a few African Americans, Indians, and pirates. On January 8th, 1815, more than 7,500 British troops marched confidently into battle, where they were met with deadly fire from Jackson's troops. Some 2,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded, compared with only about 70 Americans.
Yeah, the Battle of New Orleans was the greatest U.S. victory of the War of 1812. It was also unnecessary. 2 weeks earlier, American and British diplomats meeting in Ghent, Belgium, had signed a peace treaty ending the war. The news did not reach New Orleans until after the battle.
Yeah, no cell phones, no quick way to be able to get information from one place to another. All right, and so now we got to talk about the results of the war. Although both sides claimed victory, neither Great Britain nor the United States really won the War of 1812. The Treaty of Ghent settled none of the issues that had led to the fighting. Instead, the problems of impressment and ship seizures just faded away as peace settled over Europe. Still, the war did have important effects.
First, the war severely weakened Indian resistance in the Northwest Territory. Second, national pride in the United States surged. Third, the war had political effects. The Federalists were badly damaged by their opposition to the war, and their party never recovered. Two of the war's heroes, William Henry Harrison and Andrew Jackson, would later be elected president.
All right, you guys. So just to wrap things up, President Madison had a dilemma. Okay, all right. And he tried to negotiate at first with both France and Great Britain, but the attacks at sea continued from both of those nations. He finally abandoned isolationism and declared war on Great Britain. And the War of 1812 ended officially with a peace treaty with Great Britain, although, as we realized, didn't really officially solve much of anything.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, that was fun. Let's do this again. Let's do it again sometime.
Okay, take care, guys.